The reason you have so many choices for, well, just about everything, at the grocery store, for your phone, or online, that's not an accident. It's actually by design. Fair competition is really the engine of our economy. It pushes companies to be better and, keeps prices from going crazy. But that engine needs a rule book to keep things fair. All right, let's dive into the laws that make this whole thing possible.
Okay, just for a second, I want you to imagine that Coca-Cola and PepsiCo announced they were merging. Just like that, one massive company would control almost the entire soft drink market. I mean, what do you think happens to prices when there's no other choice? What happens to new flavors or those smaller brands you love? This exact kind of winner-take-all scenario is precisely what America's antitrust laws were designed to stop.
But thankfully, that's not the world we live in. Instead, we have this, a marketplace that's just buzzing with options. This variety, this power that we have as consumers, it wasn't just handed to us, it was fought for. And to really understand that fight, we've got to go back and see what the world looked like before these rules were even a thing.
So let's set the scene. It's the late 1800s, after the Civil War. America is industrializing at just a breakneck speed. You've got railroads crisscrossing the country, factories are pumping out goods like never before. But all this explosive growth, it created a new and pretty dangerous kind of power.
Think about it. Industries like oil and steel were making so much stuff so fast that supply started to get way ahead of demand. And the result? It was brutal, totally cutthroat competition. To survive, the biggest players realized it wasn't just about winning the game anymore. They had to rig the game entirely and just get rid of their rivals for good. So this slide here breaks down the pretty clever, and let's be honest, ruthless system they came up with. The business trust. It was kind of a legal ghost. See, on paper, all the companies were still separate, but they would secretly hand over control of their stock to a board of trustees. And this one board could then run all the companies like a single giant monster, fixing prices, carving up the map, and absolutely crushing any little guy that dared to compete.
So how did the courts deal with this at first? Well, they developed something called a rule of reason, trying to figure out what was a fair deal and what wasn't. Here's a simple way to think about it. A naked restraint is when two companies secretly agree to fix prices. Its only purpose is to kill competition. That's totally illegal. But an ancillary restraint, that's a little different. Let's say you sell your successful coffee shop. The contract might say you can't open a new one right next door for a year. Sure, that restrains trade a little, but it's secondary or ancillary to a legitimate sale. The courts really struggled with this stuff, and it became obvious that a much stronger federal law was needed.
And the public was getting fed up. I mean, they could see these trusts just choking off opportunities and jacking up prices. So the government finally had to step in. Led by people like President Theodore Roosevelt, the original trust buster, a movement started to break the stranglehold of these monopolies and bring some balance back to the economy.
So their answer came as a 1-2-3 punch, 3 landmark laws. These acts are the absolute bedrock of American antitrust policy, and they still define the rules of the game in our economy today. So let's break them down one by one. First up, the big one, the Sherman Act of 1890. This thing was a game changer. It's a criminal law that made any contract or conspiracy to restrain trade flat out illegal. And it had serious teeth. We're talking fines that can hit $100 million for corporations, and executives could face up to 10 years in prison. This was a really clear message from the government. Competition is not optional. So the Sherman Act was powerful, but it was also a little vague. So in 1914, Congress passed the Clayton Act to get way more specific. This was a civil law, and it was designed to be proactive, to stop monopolies before they could even form. So the key takeaway here is that these 4 things, like charging different customers different prices for the same product, or a merger that would kill competition, became illegal if their effect was to seriously hurt competition. Okay, so now you've got these powerful new laws on the books. But who's going to enforce them? Who's going to be the referee on the field, calling fouls day in and day out? Well, that's where the Federal Trade Commission comes in. In the exact same year as the Clayton Act, Congress passed the Federal Trade Commission Act. This law did 2 really critical things. First, it just broadly outlawed all unfair methods of competition, which was a great catch-all for anything the other laws might have missed. And second, it created the agency to police the whole market, the Federal Trade Commission, or as you know it, the FTC. So the FTC basically has 2 main jobs. On one side, you've got its Bureau of Competition, which carries on that old trust-busting tradition, looking into mergers and anti-competitive behavior.
Then on the other side, the Bureau of Consumer Protection is all about protecting you and me directly from scams and shady business tactics. And both of these bureaus are backed up by expert economists who analyze all the data.
And that second mission, well, that brings this whole story right into our lives today. Because this isn't just about giant corporate mergers from 100 years ago. These laws, and the FTC that enforces them, have a direct impact on us pretty much every time we buy something.
So, what exactly is an unfair trade practice? Well, it's pretty much any business tactic that's deceptive, fraudulent, or just plain unethical that's designed to manipulate you or cause you harm. The whole point of the law is to make sure that you're making decisions based on honest information, not trickery.
And I'm willing to bet some of these are going to sound very familiar. The FTC is always on the lookout for practices that are designed to mislead you. Let's look at a classic example.
We've all seen it, right? A fantastic offer. Buy one, get one free. But then, buried deep in the fine print, there's a catch. The deal is only good if you also sign up for some expensive service plan you never wanted in the first place. That's not a free offer. That's a hidden cost. And that is a classic deceptive practice.
This tactic even has a name you've probably heard, the bait and switch. A store advertises an incredible deal on a product just to get you in the door. That's the bait. But when you get there, whoops, that item is mysteriously sold out, and the salesperson starts pushing you to buy a much more expensive alternative. And that's the switch. It's not just sneaky, it's totally illegal. And the list just goes on and on. I mean, think about all those fake 5-star reviews online, or high-pressure sales calls that target seniors. What about the store that's been going out of business for the last 3 years? Or when ads hide mandatory fees until the very last second? The FTC fights all of this to make sure companies are competing based on the quality and price of their stuff, not on how well they can trick you. So from Gilded Age oil barons to a sneaky online ad today, the core idea is exactly the same. Let's kind of zoom out and wrap this up by looking at the big picture of why all of this still matters so much.
This right here, this is the whole point. This is the end game. Antitrust laws exist for one reason: to promote and protect competition. And a truly competitive market, it gives us all of this. It forces prices down, it drives companies to innovate and give us more and better choices, and it protects all of us from being taken advantage of. It's basically the legal framework for a fair economy.
But of course, the battlefield has changed. The fight that started with physical monopolies over things like railroads and steel, it's evolved. Today, the challenge is all about digital platforms, where power doesn't come from owning oil fields, but from controlling our data, creating network effects, and writing the algorithms that shape our lives.
And that leaves us with the really critical question of our time. When just a handful of tech giants control our digital town squares, the app stores, and the very flow of information itself, how do we apply these century-old principles of fairness to make sure the economy of the future is competitive, innovative, and open to everyone?